Okay, yeah, we'll just trial this for the after show as a separate thing rather than one long thing because, my viewers have very short attention spans and I'm pretty sure they're all sociopaths, but handsome sociopaths. Oh, we're recording. Oh, so subsidiarity, yes. It's one of these things which people don't know a lot about, but really, really should. I mean, it's so vital. I would say, to the future of politics. So if you could go over that one more time.
Well, but basically, just in a nutshell, the simplest way to explain it is this idea that power should reside in the lowest authority. If you were looking at, say, a hierarchy or a chain of command, that power should reside with the lowest authority possible, who is most appropriately placed to actually exercise that authority. So, for example, a really classic way to illustrate this is as a household, mum, dad, and the kids, right? It is most appropriate that it is the parents who decide, what the kids are eating for dinner each night and where they go to school and what programs they watch. It's not the job of the state to do that. That would be an abuse of power. And what happens with globalism is you have this tendency to try and shift power out of the hands of people where it should reside and further up the food chain, usually to smaller groups of people. And you create like a super state. So instead of having the state just as in your own country doing things it shouldn't be doing and overreaching into areas where it shouldn't be going, you now have that happening on a global scale where, you have, and the EU is a very classic example of that. And that's one of the reasons why I think a lot of people just got fed up with it and decided they didn't want to be part of it,
And it's always pitched as these super states, or super cities, as here in Auckland, as it's going to be more efficient, it's going to be able to, if it's centrally planned, it's going to be better. And of course, it's all leftist thinking. I mean, the left, I agree with Stefan Molyneux, lost the argument in the 60s. When all the horrors that were coming out of the Soviet Union, which at the time people had this glowing view of as a workers' paradise, all the horrors, including the deaths of tens of millions and, including in China, it doesn't work. But still we see the push towards socialism, which is the opposite of subsidiarity. And if you look at the Podesta emails, they're even mocking Catholics who are big practices of that in church structures. Going, how sophisticated they think they are because they throw around such words such as subsidiarity.
Yeah, that's right. And the thing is, too, it's the funny thing about when you look at communism, there was still that willful denial about communism going on right through the 80s, even right up to the point of the fall of the wall. The Berlin Wall. There is still this unwillingness to actually accept the testimony of people who have escaped from those regimes, who are saying, no, it's bad, it's evil, it's not good. There were academics and others in places like the United States who were still saying, well, no, capitalism and communism are just variations on a theme. The same thing, just sort of expressed differently, and it's actually not that bad, and it's only really with the fall of the Berlin Wall where it all comes out, that there's no more hiding from the reality of what communism really is, that came to an end. And I think a lot of the same thing is true here. There are a lot of people who just refuse to see the evidence that sits there, right there in front of them. No conspiracy theories, no special hidden pages on the dark web, just plain old facts that are right there. You can see what's happening, see what's going on. So, for example, the EU. Why the heck did the EU need an army? And yet it's still pressing ahead for its own army. Why does the EU need an army? And an army that apparently will be used to protect its states and possibly quell problems, as they said, within its own borders. Well,
which, of course, are not the Muslims.
Well, yeah, and how can you have... Just think about that. How can you have a group of nations who are all independent nations, yet as a group there are unelected officials in another country, for most of them in Brussels, who have their own army at their disposal? that's effectively a mercenary force at that point, surely, you know?
Oh, because what are they owing allegiance to? You know, it's...
That's right. It's everything you don't want, and it's all right there. As I understand it, even since Brexit, they're still pushing ahead to have that implemented. Now, I think you have to be extremely naive or foolish or either nefarious to actually want to support something like that, because everything you should know about the world and how, you know, the failure of man and the darkness in the heart of man that causes all the problems in the world and has since the time of Adam, that hasn't changed. So why would you want to give a group that lacks any real accountability their own military force? It just, everything about it is crazy. So it's astounding too that you've got left-wing people who are supporting that, you know?
Where it makes a lot of dark sense. Like, just going back to the communist point, I mean, when I was at school in the 90s, you know, occasionally, you know, one of my peers would come out as the reason why communism didn't succeed was because it was implemented in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And when I was going through Teachers College and was placed in a number of schools, and this one school I did teach at, I heard at least 3 of them, students, say the exact same thing. And I'm wondering who the hell is telling them that.
Yeah.
They had Stefan Molyneux had a brilliant thing on McCarthyism, which is often seen as a paranoid witch hunt, which, if you look at the historical evidence, not only was there the communist infiltration of the US government, it was far worse than even McCarthy realized. But, you know, the media doesn't... if you talk about Nazism, you know, you sort of get an automatic where communism, which killed tens and tens of millions of people, not the same thing. And, you know, even like Castro in Cuba, you know, apologists are plenty in the media.
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about Obama, right? So everyone is like, you know, oh, what's going on with these? And, you know, even Obama is dropping these sort of hints. What's going on with Trump and his cozy relationship to Putin? You know, what's going on there? And it's like, hold on a minute. What about Barack Obama's cozy relationship with Iran or with Cuba? Like, you know, like those aren't they equally, if not worse?
Oh, well, the last time you were on, you said, mentioned, it was the first time I heard it, about people saying the Obama presidency was scandal-free. And since then I've heard it so many times, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Oh, it's insane. And I think now that he's gone, I think it's probably going to take another wee while, but I think it'll maybe a couple of years. I think finally the full extent, possibly even after Trump's presidency, we will probably then begin to see the full extent of how, the issues and how those issues that plagued the Obama administration actually were more problematic perhaps than people realised.
Yeah, as sort of historians can look into it without fear of... you know, people who weren't even born during the Obama presidency. And it's just looking at facts. I mean, I've seen many things these days in politics, both in politics and in, you know, private organizations, etc. And, you know, it's like, well, they're going to be records and people are going to look back. So you might be presenting this image now, but later on, people are going to see, you know, you might be dead or gone or retired or whatever, but, you know, you can't hide forever.
No. And I think the thing about Barack Obama, as I said, was he painted everything in this glow of hope, and he delivered the, you know, very, very, very gifted speech at delivering speeches. But the point is that sooner or later there is going to be someone who's going to peel back the layers and say, well, what was actually there?
There was this actual phenomena of photographers trying to get an angle where the light catches Obama's head, so it looks like he has a halo. And they had this whole, going through the photos and how, and photographers was like, I did not realize that was...
It's funny, he was and still people bought into this whole, it was messianic. That's why I say he is actually more like a demagogue than Trump ever has been. Because Trump is not a great orator. He is not a great orator. He's clumsy on a podium and clumsy with a mic. And he is not, he doesn't really go, he says things that appeal to people, but I wouldn't call it the same sort of generic, promissory type stuff that you. In some instances it is, but in others, I don't think it's like what Obama did. Obama was a very well polished, when it came to PR and public relations, he was just so well polished in that regard. And Trump is more like, so he's got the common man's touch. He's a bit more rough and ready,
It's not quite the friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears type thing.
No.
But there is a sense of there's more substance on, because Obama was very polished, but a couple of times the teleprompter gave out and he was just floundering. He couldn't even recover on his own. It was astounding. Yeah,
that's right. He was... and the funny thing is, when people talk about plagiarising and stuff, but in those early days, it is fair to say, I think he was lifting, if not nothing more, he's lifting sentiment straight from probably speeches by Martin Luther King, JFK. There was certainly that sort of tone and style. There's no doubt, I think he had watched that sort of stuff and used it as a guide for how he would deliver. And he's far better at it than Trump is. So, as I said, people are willing to turn a blind eye to a lot, but sooner or later someone gets to peel back those layers and say, well, what was really there? And it's interesting, we're only really just starting to do that with JFK now, I think, because JFK had the same sort of mystique. He was... Camelot was the closest sort of thing to royalty that America's ever seen. And, the Kennedy family, they worship the ground this family walked on. But really now, in recent years, and it's only in recent years, the layers are starting to get pulled back. More information is coming out. We've realised that, to be fair, he probably JFK makes Trump look like a choir boy in comparison to his sexual proclivities and dalliances while he was in office.
And I think it was helped that he had I think it was helped he had, as you said, the family, the clan, like Edward, not Edward. His brother, Teddy, Kennedy, who was a horrific human being. He drove the car off into the lake or whatever with a young woman inside. He got out and she ended up drowning. He didn't call for help for 10 hours, but she was in this air bubble and survived for hours afterwards, but died a horrific death.
Oh, Chappaquiddick, yeah.
Yeah, and he got to continue on. I don't understand. Well, this is probably why Milo Yiannopoulos talks about the left doesn't throw out its bad actors.
Well, the thing is that it's like the thing is too. So that Chappaquiddick scandal, which plagued the family, his father JFK's father almost certainly there was some dodgy, corrupt dealings going on to get him and to the position of power, which, just to be fair, is sort of normal for the day as well. His sexual issues, and he's now talked about openly as being a sex addict, and also the fact that he's hyped up as being this sort of bastion of the civil rights movement, but he wasn't. It's Johnson. Lyndon Johnson is the man who actually signs these things into law, and actually brings about the concrete change. So in many ways you can sort of make that comparison, that his great speech, a very polished PR campaign, him and his wife always appeared pristine in public, the First Lady and the President. He was young and this youthful sort of persona, he was hip, he was a real cool dude, hung out with all the cool people. But once you peel back the layers, like in actual fact, especially when you think about things like, say, the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's astounding to me people still talk that up in JFK's favour, but in actual fact it was insane when you think about it. Like JFK talking about he was willing to go to the brink. But in actual fact, there's no way he should have been willing to go to the brink to take the world to nuclear war over what was clearly some questionable foreign policy machinations on the part of his administration, that led to the whole thing.
Yeah, and if you look at the communist infiltration at the time, especially in the State Department, people were feeding, it leaked like a sieve.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to take a while. There's been a certain momentum to history. But as time goes on, like we were talking before about the Martin Luther King bust, the fake story about it being removed. I think one day it will end up being removed. But, and I think it would be as things like Martin Luther King did amazing things for the civil rights movement. But he was also a really questionable character. I mean, he was a Protestant minister that had orgies and plagiarized heavily. I mean, I'm not saying the man wasn't smart, but a lot of his academic work was completely plagiarized. They didn't find it out until after his death, and were putting things together and doing the analysis of the text and but. Yeah, I mean, one day the Churchill bust will come out. I mean, as time goes on, things change.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I think that's different here and which might speed the process up is a couple of things. I think we're a lot more cynical now about governance and leaders, whereas in that era there was a lot more trust. Nixon really fractured that trust in a big way, and America never came back from that, and neither did the rest of the world, really. And then, we realised how fallible these leaders actually were. So there's a lot more cynicism now, and I think also the internet and the ease and speed with which you can access information has got a lot faster. And so I suspect that, when you talk about peeling back the layers of history like that on a figure, I think it'll happen a lot quicker. That's my instinct anyway.
Although it's going to be interesting because it was a big thing when it's happening, but of course these things get easily forgotten. The end of net neutrality, Obama handing over the internet basically to UN administration, where that has far-reaching implications that we're not going to see for years, but I think it's going to be quite painful once it comes out.
Yeah, and I think this is to where it's going to be interesting for me. Then this is the real test of Trump's presidency, is because, like I said, he's given himself this very clear mandate with the speech the other day. This is what I'm going to do. The question is now, will he live up to that? Will he actually start doing those things and perhaps rolling back the things that need to be rolled back, or will he just fall into the trap? And the other of a lot of leaders do is they keep the status quo going once they take power. The other thing too, I was talking to someone about today, was this is really a test in a lot of ways too for the Republican, the House of Representatives, because they now have the ability to effect some real and substantial and very positive change, because they now have a presidency with them and the control of the houses, right? So it's going to be a test for them as well, a litmus test to see whether they are actually going to function in a healthy way, or whether it's just going to be more wasted time.
Because we're going to. Trump has, talked about things. Sorry, to backtrack a bit. Some of the mainstream media commentary in his inauguration speech, somebody from one of the major networks said that his America First stance had anti-Semitic overtones. At the same time that one of Trump's very first things that he's doing is moving the Israeli embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's and it's increasingly, it's getting increasingly funny because the left is becoming anti-Semitic because of its stance on Israel, and but yeah, it's just astounding how they like attacks on Jeff Sessions about him being racist because in a case where he pushed for the death penalty for one of the leaders of the KKK, in a case that destroyed it in Alabama, he made the joke because a lot of the witnesses said, Ku Klux Klan members said, oh, we were higher at the time. And he said to one of his workmates, I thought the KKK were great guys until I found out they were into marijuana. But, it was a joke, but it was presented when they were trying to make him a federal judge as, serious, I mean, completely, it's just how the left demonizes good people. I forget where I was going with that, right?
Well, this is the thing about media reporting, right? I said something the other day. At what point do we actually admit there's a problem here? We can't keep pretending that the mainstream media has just got a few minor little problems around the edges. Like, it just seems there's this constant slew now of reporting things or misreporting because they're deliberately looking for scandal. It's like every reporter has been... I don't know. Part of it for me, I think, is there's all sorts of factors at play here, but I can't help but sense that part of it, perhaps, is that a lot of reporters are working under this idea that they've watched too many movies about Deep Throat and the Watergate affair, and now they think that every single story, unless it's a human interest piece, they've got to be finding that scoop, that blows the true conspiracy wide open, And you just sort of get that sense that that's how they're approaching everything. And so, a guy says something, and all of a sudden it's taken and treated as if it's some sort of serious and major thing when it's not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you get the sense that a lot of people just do that now because it's just so much easier to demonize people than it is to actually engage with their arguments.
And, my two takes on the media and journalists, a lot of them are political activists, really, and most of them are left-wing. I mean, the vast majority. And the second one is they're not intellectuals.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not... occasionally you come across ones that are, brilliant and, they can talk on many things. But a lot of the time, they're just given talking points from researchers. They don't know what the hell they're talking about.
Yeah.
Or it's ideological, is the first point of ideology.
Yeah, that's right. And it's so blatantly obvious. You can see it from a mile away, right?
Yeah, and it's just like with social trust breaking down. We talked about before last time you were on the show about how Trump's presidency is a reprieve. It's not the solution because there's a lot of work to do.
No. In fact, in many ways, it's not even so much like just a breathing space. It's almost like it's like I don't know. It's like there's a perfect game of Skittles going on, and it's like a kid has just run through and smacked over all the Skittles. And it gives you an opportunity to say, well, we don't want to be playing Skittles anymore. We want to play something else. And they weren't listening until that kid ran through and smashed over the Skittles. And it gives the opportunity. They're either going to set them up again and carry on, or they're going to change the game,
because I think people are realizing we're just on a stagnant track. There was this inevitable leftist march, and the future didn't look bright. Even leftists complained how dark the future was. But now, because I've got this whole big thing about, the financial system can't, and there's a whole world of pain that's coming. We can't avoid it. People might want to just look into something like doomsday prepping. There was a good, there's a good series on that. But
get that bunker built.
learn to grow vegetables. I found it very therapeutic and tasty. But we're not going to see. Well, as you said, it's rather going to be a continuation. Just you can't really do that much, and you keep the status quo or whatever. Well, it's going to be a game changer. Which hopefully Trump is the person to do it. You can't think of a very few individuals, actually nobody that could pull it off. only Trump could pull off an election where the establishment on both sides, the mainstream media, the Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and all the social media were against him. And he won.
It's so, honestly, it was the most bizarre thing when you think about it, because there's just no way he should have won the election, really. And yet he did it. And I think what's interesting is it actually showed that there was a lot more strategy going on, because they did really run a very clever campaign, and there's clearly a lot more strategy going on, and a lot of more thought had gone into it than the media had given him credit for. You know.
Yeah, well, I think he spoke, just a lot of truth. So when people like in the Rust Belt, heard it, it's like yes.
Yeah.
Democrats don't say that. Well, they say it, and nothing has changed for decades.
Yeah, the status quo, mate.
Yeah, it's
funny thing.
It's how Trump will relate to the people and overseas and other countries. It's trust. I don't think a lot of the establishment trusts Trump or other countries, but they have to work with them.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think, it's, hopefully, he can get partners. Like, I think Theresa May will work with him.
Yeah.
Marie Le Pen from France, she's sighted at Trump Tower.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I was very excited about that. I said so on the show when we're talking about Islamic immigration and how the demographics in France are terrible, and how I want there to be a France. I'm not French. I don't speak French. It's not on my bucket list to go to France. But, I wish them all the best, and I wish them survival. The same with Germany.
Who doesn't want it? See, that's the thing to me. I get the sense that a lot of the anti-Trump crowd, they actually now have moved from the sort of skepticism and, sort of vitriolic and sort of hateful commentary about the guy, to they actually now want him to fail, and they want him to fail badly, so they can sit there and go, "We told you so." But that's really problematic, because I don't care what you think about Trump, and there's plenty of things not to like. If he fails badly, we're all in real trouble. And none of us should want that. None of us should want that. And if you live in America, there's no way you should want that either.
The people who want that are like Hollywood celebrities and people with a lot of money behind them that they could ride it out.
Yeah. Well, they think they could, but if it all goes pear-shaped, then, it'll be going pear-shaped in a big way.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, looters will be going to their house because they have stuff.
They got the good stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're almost done a second show. So, was there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, I think that's me, mate. The only other thing that's interesting is I've just noticed this evening that that WikiLeaks has said that it's because Donald Trump said he's not going to publish his tax returns now after saying that he would. So WikiLeaks has just put out a tweet apparently saying that if anyone has them, they will publish them. And I think good on them too, because if it is true that he's not actually willing to do, because he said he was going to do it, then I think WikiLeaks is a good mechanism for keeping him accountable. I think it's a good thing.
Oh, well, yeah, we can't have double standards saying, yes, it's good when it was like Hillary, but no, we don't want it for. I mean, I read a comment that was when I was reading Breitbart before, one of the readers put, if the left didn't have double standards, they would have no standards at all.
Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting to me, because I would say that a lot of people will. It'll be interesting to see where the double standards lie. I mean, there's no doubt you get double standards on the right, but I think there's a lot more people who actually voted for Trump who would be willing to also call into account than there are people who would have gone the other way. That's my instinct anyway.
Well, one of the YouTubers I picked up during the election and who I still follow is a he did describe himself as a progressive, but now he's like, what does a progressive even mean anymore? But he's on the left, but
Yeah.
he's constantly talking. He was very pro Bernie, but he's like, how could anyone on the left support Hillary Clinton? And he's constantly going on about the WikiLeaks and her, what the on the right held her to, the objective standards, and it's quite, obviously is progressive. I don't agree with everything he has to say, but reality, I would say, we can meet on universal ethics, and yes, if anyone does it, it's bad. It doesn't matter. You don't get a pass because you're on the same team.
Yeah, funny, eh? Mate, it's a strange old world we're living in now. All of a sudden, the supposed liberals have become the least liberal people, and they are now pushing for big government. And it's so funny. That's what Trump's inauguration speech was so classic. A lot of people bemoaning the speech. And it's like, well, I don't understand what you're bemoaning. He talked about giving power back to the people and how the state had got out of control and the system was failing people. He talked about people in poverty, and people were on the left were attacking it. And I thought, man, times have changed.
Because they're the elite, they're the politicians, they're the people, media and presenters, and
yeah, that's right.
They don't want it given back to the people. They're enjoying it quite nicely.
Yeah. It's like, no thanks, we'd rather keep this for ourselves, thank you.
But I think there is a general loss of identity, a lot of liberal, progressivism is slowly built up and it's very liberal, and some of them are wondering, what the hell, and I can't, the progressives are the majority on the left now, and they're just like... with mass migration and, changing demographics, what does it mean to be somebody of, a certain, there was sort of a nation state and now it's a multicultural, and how does that, and even people in between generations, some of the younger people, millennials, are like foreigners.
Yeah.
They didn't have the same cultural upbringing or cultural reference points, despite were born in the same geographic location.
Yeah, that's right. It's a changing era, mate. Changing era.
Oh, well, we could rant on, but yes, we should probably leave it there. Thank you very much, Brendan. And of course, you can find Brendan at Left Foot Media on YouTube. And what was the website again?
WatchLFM.com. That's WatchLFM.com.
And if you're wondering where you can find me, do you know whose channel you're on? I mean, seriously. Oh, you can find me on Minds. Yeah, okay. I'll leave it there.